Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last video. Most notably, I've been porting the entire game over from Unity to Godot. No prizes for guessing why. Anyway, despite that, today I'd like to show you how I created this water trail effect, and also how I made the sprite gradually cut off as it goes into the water. Let's start with the water trail. Previously, I just had these particles, but I wanted to see if I could make something a bit nicer. And whatever we make would need to be applicable to all the different creatures. After a lot of experimenting, I had this idea to combine a line trail with a shader, and this is the result. To make a line in Godot, you can simply use the Line2D node and adjust the points. But in order to make it act like a trail, you need to add a script that continuously updates those points. In the script, there is a queue to keep track of all the points, and the current position will get added to that queue every frame. If the queue reaches the max length, the excess points are then dequeued. Then all that's left is to override the Line2D's point array using the points from our queue. With that done, the line now looks like this. I also adjusted the gradient and width curves so that the line is wider and fades out towards the tail end. Eventually, there will be ripples travelling along the direction of the fade. So in anticipation of that, I also created this gradient texture in Photoshop and assigned it to the line. The texture kinda gives it that V shape, which the shader will make use of later. One thing that immediately stuck out to me was how the line collapses in a very unnatural way. The tail end should not remain that wide when the line becomes short. Instead, it should collapse like this. So I added a bit of logic in that script from earlier to adjust the tail width based on how far away it is from the player. And now it looks like this. Cool, so now that we've got the trail, the next step is to add in the ripples. The main idea behind this shader is to take the red channel of the line texture and plug that into a sine function. To make it move, we simply add the current time to our input for the sine function. It looks quite strange to use this result by itself, so instead we can remap and subtract it from the original colour to make the effect more subtle. Right now the colours are also quite blended and fuzzy, which doesn't really fit with my pixel art style. So I decided to add another section of logic to quantize the colour. This was achieved by multiplying, flooring, and dividing the value by some number parameter. It's looking better, but now we have to tackle the problem of making it into pixel art. Unfortunately, because the UVs of the Line2D node are very stretched and distorted, we can't use the old trick of just quantizing them. In order to pixelate it without distortion, the only way I could think of was to use a sub-viewport. This node will render its children onto a texture, which you can then use on a sprite. For those of you that are familiar with Unity, it's sort of like Unity's render texture. I really wanted to avoid using this due to performance concerns, but I'm hoping by setting the resolution of the texture to a very low number, it won't have much impact. That low resolution will also create the pixelized look that we want. Now another thing I wanted to do was cover up this end underneath the player, because I really don't like the way it disappears into nothing. To do this, I simply added this circular sprite as a child of the sub-viewport. Then it kinda gets merged together. I put different sized circles on each animal, and this ended up creating some nice stationary ripples as a bonus. Okay, so now all that's left to fix is the trail being visible on land. To address this, I decided to slowly fade the trail in and out depending on the depth. This was easily done by adding a new brightness parameter to the shader, and then adding some code to update that parameter based on the depth. And that's the water trail complete. So the other thing I wanted to show was how I made the sprite disappear into the water. Although it might look slightly strange at times, what's great about this method is that it can be applied to any creature. There's no need to painstakingly hand draw a different animation for each one, which I really appreciate. Basically, if you move the sprite down and mask off the bottom at the same time, it kinda gives the illusion that it's in the water. In Godot 4, creating a mask like this is really simple. Sprite 2D nodes have the option to clip all children, which is exactly what we need. So in Photoshop, I drew up these mask shapes, making them slightly different depending on the creature's imaginary contour lines. I made sure to put a band of semi-transparency to help soften the line. This is what it looks like in-game. Next, we want the sprite to move up and down automatically while the mask stays stationary. So I wrote a little function to override the position of the body relative to its parent, which is the mask. First, an inverse lerp function is used to remap the current water height to a percentage, where 0% would be at the shore and 100% would be at some arbitrary deep point. By the way, if you're wondering where the current height comes from, it comes from the height map used to procedurally generate the terrain. Next, we scale and add any initial positioning back. The scale should be set depending on how much you want the sprite to move down. Now sometimes we may not want our animals to move down that much. For example, if this chicken moved down as much as the player, it would go completely underwater. So to prevent this, we can clamp the value to a max depth amount. Then that can be set individually for each creature. That's pretty much it for the code. All that's left is to apply the new position. As a finishing touch, I also added a small bobbing movement when the creature reaches max depth. This is done using a simple sine wave offset. Alright, that's all I wanted to show today. Hope you found it interesting or helpful. By the way, if anyone has any other ideas on how to implement a water trail-like effect for 2D games, I'd really like to hear them. In the meantime, I'll be continuing to port everything over to Godot. See ya!